Randy Van Wagner. I'm the president here at Mohawk Valley Community College, and we're thrilled to have you for today's Strong Start to Finish session to kick off our Guided Pathways Institute couple of days coming up. And the Strong Start to Finish is a really exciting opportunity for our state and certainly the SUNY system as well. But I understand, as I say, welcome to Mohawk Valley Community College. I understand some of you got the tour out of the way. From the parking lot to the building, so appreciate your patience with that, but glad you're here. And fortunately it's today, not tomorrow, because the rain will come tomorrow. Solidly, from 5 a.m. to noon, 100%, like there's one thing, guaranteed rain tomorrow. So today we'll soak it up. After living, and Chris can respect this, after living 5 years in Denver and 8 in Omaha, having been born and raised in Michigan, I like to say you can't have the green without the gray. Because there you get lovely yellow, but it's all brown. So we get our green with the rain. So welcome everyone. Thrilled you're here. Going to be a great day, great afternoon. And my job is to say welcome. I've done that. And the second part is a good pleasure. I want to say welcome to Dr. Baston there in Rockland. Welcome. There we go. And to introduce Johanna Duncan Portier, our Senior Vice Chancellor for Community Colleges in the Educational Pipeline, who works diligently and continuously on our behalf as our advocate, as our guide, and as a mentor for many of us, and certainly a friend to all of us. And her vision to start connecting dots and one grant opportunity with the next and layering them one on top of the rest to bring continued resources to us. And days when, with declining enrollments in so many campuses, those additional resources to, as I often say, the margin of excellence to get us beyond our operating and just continuing to offer programs and services, but to take us to the next level. Those require different funding streams and different partnerships, and no one sees those opportunities better than Johanna. So please join me in welcoming Johanna Duncan Portier.
Randy, that was very kind and appreciated. I am so glad to be here this morning. This represents one of the most exciting things we're going to do, which is to launch our Strong Start to Finish initiative. I was going to say grant application or award, but it really is our initiative, which is going to support the work that we are already doing. We have, I think, a pretty exciting agenda for the next couple of hours. We're going to, after I give some introductory remarks, we're going to hear from our director of Strong Start to Finish, who flew in this morning from Florida for Strong Start to Finish, working through Education Commission of States. Again, longtime friend and supporter of really all the work we're doing here at the State University of New York. You'll be hearing from Chris. Deb Meckel is going to tell you about the new study, this new report really that just came out of CCRC on multiple measures and its implication for our work. And of course we're going to have some very detailed conversation from Jennifer Miller. Is she in the room? I have to just say thank you to Jen. So many people, and you'll hear probably the least from her even though she's on the agenda. You just don't know how fastidious this woman is. She works day and night working on all of these different initiatives, for which I am very, very grateful. Thank you, Jennifer. You're supposed to all applaud. Thank you. I guess I should have said, please join me in thanking her. I'll do that next time. And then last but not least, of course, we'll have some conversations. What I want to start with, and then I want to have an opportunity for Chris to know who is in the room. So we're actually going to go around the room and have each of you identify yourself and your function as well as your institution. You represent 10 of our finest campuses across the state and then some. We are very, very proud to be here together today. You'll hear more about this, but I will just say this. SUNY has been at the business of bringing evidence-based student success strategies to scale. We've been at it, I would say, really, really diligently for the last 5 years. People are taking notice. Your work is having incredible results and really making a difference for thousands and thousands of students across our state, from the tip of Long Island to the Canadian border. I'm very proud to be working with all of you, and I'm so excited that people such as Chris Mullen and his team from the Education Commission of States are actually taking notice and wanting to invest in what works. So we're very, very fortunate to have that. So with that, I'm going to actually ask if we would start. You know who he is, but why don't you tell us again?
Randy Van Wagner, President of BCC.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Mullen. I'm the Director of Strong Start to Finish at the Education Commission of the States.
Join me in giving him a round of applause. Fast learner.
Hi, I'm Andrea Wade. I'm the Provost and Vice President at Monroe Community College.
Hi, I'm Debbie Meckel. I'm Assistant Provost for Assessment and Community College Education at SUNY System Administration.
That's quite a title.
It is. It doesn't fit on a business card.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate Douglas, and I'm president at Corning Community College.
Hi everyone, I'm Sue Deere. I'm Provost and Executive Vice President at Rockland Community College.
Hi, Deborah Wolfson, Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs, Suffolk County Community College.
Paul Bowden, Vice President for Academic Affairs at Suffolk as well.
Good afternoon. Sean McKay, President, Suffolk County Community College. Pleasure to meet you.
I'm Luke Taylor. I'm the Vice President for Learning and Academic Affairs here at MVCC.
Stephanie Reynolds, Vice President for Student Affairs, Mohawk Valley.
Katrina Campbell, Registrar at Tompkins Cortland.
I'm Paul Reifenizer. I am Provost at Tompkins Cortland.
I'm Sarah Bray. I'm Assistant Professor of Business and Entrepreneurship at Jamestown Community College.
Hi, I'm Brenda White, and I am a math faculty member at Morrisville State College and also working with QuantWay.
Lloyd Holmes, Vice President for Student Services at Monroe Community College.
Good morning, I'm Jesse Coraggio. I'm from EdPros Consulting, and I'm here to work with the Guided Pathways work.
Kimberly Collins. I'm the Associate Vice President of Academic Services at Monroe Community College and the PI for the SUNY Guided Pathways project.
Everyone, I think you already know, I'm Jennifer Miller. I'm the Executive Director of the New York State Student Success Center and also the Director of Community College Support at SUNY System Administration.
Hi, Audrey Schwartz, Institutional Research at SUNY System.
And I'm Debbie Beal. I'm the Associate Dean of Instruction of the Professional Studies at Corning Community College.
Good afternoon. My name is Jackie Van Brunt. I'm the Associate Dean of Enrollment Management at Corning Community College.
Wendy Beasley, Assistant Dean for Student Success at SUNY Ulster.
Cherry Amborsati, Vice President, Student Services, SUNY Orange.
Hi, I'm Erica Hackman. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs at SUNY Orange.
Chris Young, President, SUNY Orange.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Del Conte, Professor of English at Onondaga Community College, and also the Project Director for the SUNY Developmental English Learning Community.
Hi, I'm Mark Mirasol. I am the Math Pathways Program Manager for SUNY.
Hi, I'm Byron Shaw. I'm the Associate Dean of Humanities and Social Sciences at Corning.
Hi, I'm Jen O'Hara. I am an Associate Professor of Law at SUNY Corning, and I'm also the Faculty Chair-elect.
Hi, I'm Julie White, Senior Vice President, Student Engagement and Learning Support at Onondaga.
You have two gentlemen in the back of the room?
MVCC IT support.
Well, hey, you are. We're very happy you're here. And you are? You have names? Excellent. And you?
I'm Sharon Zone. I work in the marketing department.
Excellent, excellent. Sean? Oh, and who are you?
On the screen.
Oh, it looks like he's frozen. Michael?
I'm Michael Bass, President, Rockland Community College.
All right, thank you. This is really such an awesome day because this is the first time that we have actually had an integration of our multiple initiatives together. Starting this afternoon, we have the beginning. I'll speak from here so everyone can hear. Starting this afternoon, we will have the first of our 3 days of our Guided Pathways Institute. Today is really strictly about the launch of Strong Start to Finish, which is, I would say, wrapping the ribbon around the work that we're doing with Guided Pathways. Some of you are very involved in QuantWay, StatWay. Others of you are very involved in our Accelerated Learning Project, our English co-requisite model, and others of you have just for the very first time become involved in our Student Success Initiative with Guided Pathways. We are now at a point where we're bringing it all together. And again, Chris is going to tell you a lot more about that. But what I've been asked to do this afternoon is to share how we got to this point. how it all fits together. So some of you will know more about some aspects of this than others, and will have even recognized some of the stories I'll share, but this is about bringing it all together and how it all fits in what we would consider a very comprehensive package. We just finished introductions. If the two of you, Kim, would share who you are.
Great. I'm Carol from SUNY Broome. I'm the Vice President for Student Development and the Chief Diversity Officer. Great, big, beautiful campus.
We've been wandering a little bit. I'm Kim Scalzo from SUNY System Administration, Open SUNY and Student Success Initiatives. Great to see you all.
One of our biggest supporters, helping to facilitate the financing that we receive from Program Improvement Fund. So thank you both for joining us. So speaking about how this all comes together. So many of you know that we made a commitment 5 years ago when we had our remediation task force. We took a look at the data, we looked at where our greatest strengths as well as weaknesses were in terms of students getting to the finish line, persisting and graduating, or completing their program of study. And it was very clear that the data showed that the greatest weaknesses were in math and in English. And we made a commitment that we would find the best evidence, the best research that existed in the country to figure out what it was we were going to do about it. It could be work that we were doing in our own backyard, or it might be work that was going on in other states around the country. And in fact, we took a serious look at California, which is of course how we wound up with Quantway and Statway. But the most important piece is not what we selected, because we might have chosen a strategy from Tennessee or Nebraska. It wasn't where we selected. It was that we wanted to do something that was going to bring student success to scale. Every one of us has history with program initiatives that affect a small, select few. And even Quantway, Statway, when we looked at the 2 pilots that we had in SUNY, which was Onondaga and Westchester Community College, who were piloting Quantway and Statway, fewer than 100 students were actually impacted. We are program rich, but we are system poor. When we have 250,000 students in our SUNY system of community colleges, let alone the state-operated campuses, the technical colleges that are a partner in this work, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of students. Getting to fewer than 100, even getting to a couple thousand, it's a drop in the bucket. And we were determined that we were going to move the dial. So how do we do that? How are we going to do that in a significant way? And so we took a look first at Quantway, and I think most of you know how this has expanded. So many of your campuses here today represent this work. Not every single one of our guided pathways campuses has Quantway. I think there are 1 or 2 that does not, but the majority of you do. And it really was that infrastructure that showed us how to invest in faculty, how to invest in our campuses, how to really bring success strategies to scale. In this case, I'll just share you the one story because it really does influence what we're even doing now with guided pathways. So we went from 2 pilot campuses, and even when we started with that, we asked folks, have you heard of something that you believe really works well? What should we look into? And what did we hear? We heard about EOP, we heard about Liberty Partnership, we heard about STEP, C-STEP, STEP, all these different initiatives. There weren't any that had this global reach that we felt we could invest in necessarily at that time. So now with just our math pathways, which is Quantway and Statway, we have 28 colleges. Really, we're well over 200 faculty and administrators. I think the number is now about 250, and our number of students enrolled going into the spring semester is about 2,500 students. Faculty driven, by faculty, for faculty. So just this real quickly, you know the paradigm shift that we had, which is investing in our infrastructure. So rather than just saying, okay, we're going to get $3 million or $5 million or $10 million. And for $10 million, how many students can you serve? And people would say, well, for $10 million, we can probably hit about 2,000 students, and this is what we're going to do. But if we had 12 million, we could reach this many students. And for 3 years or for 5 years, but when the money goes away, what happened? The initiative goes away. And so we had made a decision that we were going to invest in our faculty as well as our administrators and other key players in this. So again, our math pathways, this most recent of which was this June. I think you were with us, Chris, weren't you? It was right about the time that we learned that we were going to be a strong start to finish grant award recipient. Just real quickly, this is the story, very, very important for what we're doing because it was upon this basis that so many other things grew. So we had the remediation task force and we looked at the data and we heard about this initiative, Carnegie Math Pathways. And I went out to California and I took a look at it. It seemed very interesting. At the time, there was a woman, Bernadine Chuck-Fong, who was a professor of mathematics at Stanford University. She was talking about this and she fascinated me. I thought she was just amazing. So she said, but you know, we have this state and we have that state, we have Florida, we have Tennessee, we have Georgia, etc. She said, boy, we would love it if we could bring this to scale. I said, well, that's what we're interested in doing. So these two gentlemen from Rockland Community College, where Michael Baston is and our other great colleagues from Rockland Community College, said we're willing to be a campus to start this work at scale. Not a project, not a program, not a pilot. But we're ready to do this at scale. So some of you know that's Eric Magaram, who had just recently come from Staten Island Community College. He was the younger of the two people, certainly a lot younger than me, who said, oh my God, this is great, I can't wait to learn more about quantum. Am I right, Sue?
Yes.
Sue was behind him 150% of the way. And he said, I just came from Staten Island and we're doing great things, but if I can learn more about this, it would be even greater still. The gentleman to his right is Bill McGregor, and he had been in the system for quite a long time. He had been teaching remedial math really for, I think, decades. And so I said to him, would you, the two of you, be willing to come out to California? And the two of them are actually there in Palo Alto. We were on Stanford's campus at the time. And take a look at the training that they have in California. Take a look at this, let me know what you think. If you think this is worthwhile, we will bring this to scale at SUNY. Honestly, honestly. If you think that this is not so great, we'll move on to something else. We'll take a look at something else that we believe does work. Eric said, it's the greatest thing I've ever heard. It's great. I get to go to California and Florida in February. Oh my God, this is so great. Oh, I can't wait to learn. I've got my books and I'm ready. And Bill was like, yeah. You're a nice lady. You're a very nice lady, Johanna. But just so you know, I've been around a long time. And I've seen it all and done it all. I'm going because my president told me I should. But you need to be prepared that I'm not expecting much. And if you're prepared to hear that, we're good. So I said, I'm prepared to hear it. Call me on Monday, and I left. So we were in California together. I left probably about an hour after that conversation. I said, let me know, because I didn't want to influence them in any way, shape, or form. Well, anyway, after the 3 days, they then introduced the Math Pathways Initiative to their fellow colleagues at Rockland Community College. And really, Sue, your support of that was priceless. Because at any moment you could have said, we really don't have time for this. But instead, you supported them every step of the way. So support in the way of release time and training and all the rest. And so now we're expanding, and you can see our colleagues. We're still in California. Our colleagues were there. Suffolk County Community College joined us. We had Broome join us for the first time. And you can see Bernadine, who was still with us at the time. She's still alive. She was with us in this initiative. She's now, I think, a visiting professor at Stanford. But anyway, it was great. So just to go real quickly, this is how it grew. And so again, our last outreach in California, we grew to additional campuses. FIT joined us as well as others. We knew that if we really wanted to bring this to scale, we would have to bring California's training to New York. And that's how we got to Saratoga. And so in partnership with the Carnegie Foundation, they were our partners. And when we still have our trainings, they're there with us. Their faculty are there. We're using their network services and all the rest. But that is how we grew. This was at Empire State in Saratoga. And you will just see that it looks now like this. We needed a bigger frame. So why does this matter and why is this so powerful? This is not just about the members, and I would say maybe 10 people are not actually faculty members, because I'm in the picture, Jennifer's in the picture, and some other administrators. But each one of the faculty members who have been certified and trained, they represent several sections of additional courses that are being offered to students. So we are now, that's how we got up to about 2,500 students. And honestly, with additional faculty coming on board, additional courses being offered, it's growing and growing. Lessons learned though. One of the biggest lessons we learned was that in addition to having faculty and administrators, we had to have advisors. We also had to have our student services. We also needed to have our research folks there so that we can, again, do this for the long haul. So just to speed up, using this as a basis, start with faculty. They make the decision as to what should happen in the classroom. Learn from them every step of the way. Invest in our campuses means investing in our students. Investing in our faculty means investing in our students. By doing that, we then moved to English, which was our second piece. I can go much more quickly through this, but it was based on the same model. We took a look at what was going on, the Accelerated Learning Project, the co-requisite English model. And by the way, we are looking with Quantway at a co-requisite model for that as well. So this is, again, evolving as we're going along. But again, scaling up the co-requisite model, we now have 23 campuses. And again, I think you are sending out an RFP, Jen, for another...
You will be, yes.
I will be.
And another cohort, yes, a second cohort. Another cohort. There were planning grant campuses that will be eligible and then additional campuses.
So to that end, Matt is here. Where's Matt? Thank you. I want to thank him as well as the president of Onondaga Community College. Matt is actually leading the initiative there. We learned that, again, I hate to say this because it's used so often, but it really does take a whole village. So in this case, we've had the good work of Onondaga Community College, and thank you, Matt, for helping us really lead this. We are able to influence the work and carry it out with our other campuses as well. Again, amazing work, more to come. Student Success Center, we're very, very lucky. As we started this work, Jobs for the Future said similarly. I think of it as a good housekeeping seal of approval. Folks know that we're serious about this. We're investing in evidence-based strategies. Excuse me. And we're bringing it to scale. One second. As I talk about selectivity, you will see that there are only 15 states in the nation that are actually Jobs for the Future Student Success Center. For us in New York, it is actually CUNY and SUNY, thanks Jen, CUNY and SUNY who are Student Success Centers. And thank you so much. And this is our Executive Director of our Student Success Center.
We do it all.
What's really cool about this is that it is also supported by not only the Kresge Foundation, the Great Lakes Foundation, but also the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Again, the Gates Foundation is taking a look at their investment and looking at whether or not their investment makes a difference. And in fact, they see that it is. Again, coming together. So if Quantway, Statway, we have out. And for our Student Success Center, it's how do we share, which brings us, of course, to Guided Pathways. Now, we're doing a lot of other things. So some of you may be sitting here saying, well, what about SUNY Online, and what about DegreeWorks, and what about all these things that, by the way, were in our application? We have a list of many, many big initiatives that are underway. For the purposes of the next couple of days, we're really only talking about these three. Because at the end of the day, you can give students, as we talk about Guided Pathways, you can help students understand where they need to go to reach the pinnacle of success. But if they can't get through math, they're not going to persist. If they can't get through English, they're not going to persist. So it's a major, fundamental underpinning of what we're going to be doing with Guided Pathways. Some of you know this is a personal story, but it's very real to me. Most of you are far too young to remember this. Actually, I think all of you are as I look around the room. Maybe you, Randy, maybe, and you're pretty young. But when I went to Queens College 100 years ago, and I wanted a program of study, there wasn't any Guided Pathways. We didn't even have computers. There were tables like this in a room 5 times the size of this, and they had folding tables with cards. And if you wanted to, I actually nodding heads. There were cards, index cards, and I would pick my program of study based on what? If I needed a class at 8 o'clock in a given building, this is what I did. If I was going to get off work at 4 o'clock and I needed a class that ended at 3 o'clock, I picked that class. Then, of course, this one is an easy grader. This one's going to make you laugh. This teacher you're going to like. This is an easy course, and God knows you don't have to take math. That was the plan for me. By the second year in college, I had a stupid program. I had a lot of credits. I spent a lot of money. I didn't have any tuition assistance or any of that. I was working full-time to pay for my college education, but I had a program that was not going to get me where I needed to go, so I had to take extra courses. It was not good. Guided Pathways is truly our GPS for success, and we're very, very grateful to both Monroe Community College. Thank you, Andrea, for being here, and Kimberly, and to Randy. Thank you very much for Mohawk Valley Community College and all of your many colleagues, because you were our first pioneers. Monroe, I would say, is probably the longest at this in our SUNY system, but then, of course, Monroe is, you're actually in, Mohawk Valley is in the midst of this. As we speak, you were at AACC just last week. Again, same model. We can't do it all. It does take a village, and so Monroe is our lead for this work, as long as Mohawk Valley says it's okay. No. Along with Mohawk Valley Community College, so that it really is a co-lead, of course, with SUNY system. And with that, we now have a cohort of 10 colleges, which is so cool. It's really cool because, or I would say amazing, because with Guided Pathways, you're all in. This is not, again, an initiative for 30 kids, 50 kids, 1,000 kids, or 2,000 students. It really is about a full campus activity. And we have 10 that have committed to this, and it is for that reason that we wanted those 10 campuses to be the first to be a part of Strong Start to Finish, because you get this. You've already done the work. You've already made this investment. And while we're so grateful to Gates Foundation, the Education Commission of States, and our Strong Start to Finish team led by Chris Mullen, because they're providing support to us for what we're already doing. $2.1 million, I think it is, $2.1 million. So money, as well as supports from all of the other states around the country. Folks are looking at us, and he'll tell you more about that. It's really nice. It's really very, very nice to be competitive, but it also means that we have a burden to make sure that we deliver. And I will say that I know that SUNY will. So on that note, in terms of our scaling success, our first cohort of Guided Pathways campuses are these. You all know, all of you are here. Thank you for being here. And we know that it was kind of last minute when the notice actually went out, so it's so impressive that so many of you are here. The Guided Pathways Institute was definitely on the docket for a while, but having this additional day, we're grateful that you made the time. And I promise you
That must be it. No.
Yeah, we are just about it. So again, tomorrow will be the third in a series of the institutes. The first was at Monroe Community College. Again, investing in our campuses to invest in our students. And the second was at Rockland Community College just in June. Again, same thing. The first was learning all about Guided Pathways and what it's all about. The second was mapping. This third one is going to be onboarding, I believe, I'm correct, onboarding. And then, of course, the fourth is advising. So, and then that leads us up to where we were before, which is again. Now, what I will tell you about this, and I'm sorry, I know this is bragging, but I can't help myself. For the Strong Start application, we learned about it, and we thought, we're doing a lot of really wonderful things, and we will apply. We weren't sure we had a chance in hell, because we knew that this was a national competition. So Chris, there were 42 systems, 41?
47.
Even more. 47 systems applied for this, and we were one of the finalists. I think we were one of 9 or 11? 9. See, I'm not a math person, but I know I'm not supposed to say that because it's not what we do. But anyway, one of 9, and when we were finalists, this really was one of those times, like with people with the Academy Awards, that they say they just feel honored to be nominated because they don't expect they're going to win. So we were like, we're honored to be nominated, and we were finalists, and aren't we really great? And honestly, poor Chris, when he called to tell me that that the State University of New York was selected, I probably screamed in your ear because I was that excited. And so proud of all of you in this room, because you represent, I think, the best and the brightest and truly the most forward-thinking folks in the world. And with that, Jennifer is going to tell you what we have to do next. And Chris is going to tell you. And Chris is going to tell you what we have to do next. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I've been a teacher for a long time. Good afternoon. It's great to be with you. I'll try and stand near the microphone, but I'm not really a sedentary speaker, if you will. It's great to be with you. Again, my name is Chris Mullen. I have the honor of serving as the director of Strong Start to Finish. I'm going to take 1 minute just to provide a little bit more background so you have an idea of who's standing in front of you. 3 things, really. One is I've been a teacher for a good part of my life. I taught early childhood, elementary, middle, and high school, math and special ed in Spanish Harlem, New York, at one of the first charter schools that Joanne had a chance to oversee, and also at an affluent high school in Boca Raton, Florida. I then went back and got a double master's at Teachers College, half in curriculum and instruction, so I spent a lot of time about constructivist paradigms of teaching and interactive pedagogies, and then other half in policy, law, and finance, where I transitioned over, and I've taught at 4 universities since then, but that's a different thing. And then I studied half of courses in policy, law, and finance. Went on to get my doctorate at the University of Florida with a focus on community colleges, and in particular community college finance, which led me to work at a P20 council in Illinois on education policy issues with the governor's office, all the way from early childhood and longitudinal data systems through students leaving college and going into the workforce. I then turned on the computer one day and applied for a job. I was hired to be the first director of policy analysis for the American Association of Community Colleges in Washington, D.C., where I spent 4 years working with George Boggs, and then Walter Bumpus and David Boehm on all federal policy issues related to community colleges, where I was crunched all the data to be your primary advocate in the Great Recession. I left there to go return home to Florida due to some family circumstances, and I worked in the system office of the university system. We oversaw all 12 universities in Florida, where I was the Associate Vice Chancellor for Policy and Research, and worked on a number of issues on that side of the house, including transfer. And then one day, somebody asked me to apply for a job, and I said, sure, and I went downstairs, one flight down, which is like symbolic in Florida, in the building. And I applied for the Vice Chancellor of Financial Policy at the Florida College System. And they called me back and said, we hired somebody else. I said, well, thank you very much. It was a nice opportunity to talk with you. I said, well, we want to hire you for a different job. We don't have a chancellor, and we're going to make you the executive vice chancellor of the Florida College System. I said, that's wonderful. So this is in spring of 2015. We're implementing DevEd, right, Jesse? I mean, we're in the midst of our DevEd reform bill that passed. I also had the great opportunity to introduce performance funding to the state of Florida and change our baccalaureate accountability and approval process, all within 6 months. So it was a whirlwind, but I loved that job. And that's the second part. So teacher, worked in state system offices and policy for a long time. And then recently I had the opportunity to join Strong Start to Finish in November of last year. And the reason why I did it, because I loved my job in Florida, it was a tough job, but I loved it, was the way that this model's set up. It's like a proof of concept and proof of scale that you have a really important part of influencing. We had 3 funders, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Great Lakes Higher Education Corporation and affiliates, and Kresge Foundation came together and said, you know what, there's this thing called the Core Principles of Developmental Education or Remedial Education that was first authored in 2012, right, that relied upon a bunch of evidence to say these are the core principles that we should really think about when we're thinking about remedial education. Those same groups came back together and published an updated version in 2015. And so the funders said, if we have evidence of what works, if we know that this is what's best for students, including equity gaps and making sure students are successful and ultimately graduating, we're going to put our money behind it. So they gave the Education Commission of the States, as a fiscal intermediary, a large sum of money and said, this is how it's going to work. You, are going to decide who gets the money. We're not going to fund a third party that tries to recruit you to join into practices, right? Or get you kind of involved in a way that they think is best. What we're going to do is go out and find the systems that are leading and support them to continue their efforts to lead, right? So rather than joining Strong Start and you have to hop through a bunch of hoops and say, this is what you have to do to be a part of my club. No, we're here as a support structure, right? And that's the background of Strong Start to Finish. Again, Strong Start to Finish, it's a project of the Education Commission of the States. ECS has been around for a very long time. We're a membership-based association that states pay into. We cover early childhood all the way through college issues. We're nonpartisan. We don't take sides. We don't advocate. We just provide information and resources, right? Based in Denver, Colorado. It was actually the brainchild of James Conant Bryant, of all people, who said that states coming together can make policy just as good as the federal government. And so it has this kind of local control thrust behind it, right? Which is why we don't advocate one way or the other. We just say, here's the evidence, you make the decision about what's best for you on a range of issues. So it's a natural fit for Strong Start to Finish to be a part of ECS. So I'll call this our scaling work. Strong Start to Finish is really committed. We're very fortunate not only to have 3 funders come together and say, we believe in a competitive grant process, and we believe in the core principles that we'll talk about in a second. But we believe that change needs to happen at scale. Right? Uri Treisman is on our expert advisory board, along with Nancy Zemford, who used to be the chancellor of the SUNY system, and a number of other people, Joe Garcia, and Rick Kerwin, and others. And they realized that we can't change incrementally. It just doesn't work. These little pilot, as John said, little pilot projects that keep on going on forever, like as exploration tools, yes. As touchstones to understand things, absolutely. But at some point, you have to make the decision to be transformational, right? And we're at that inflection point in the arc and history of higher ed, right? As community college, I'm a community college person, so as community colleges, for a long time, we kind of operated in a students make their own decision, right? But it's not, those are structures that were built for us. I talked to Edmund Glazer, who was the head of AAJCC back before George Boggs, before Walter Blomqvist, and he said, I said, how do you feel about this whole completion agenda? This is about 2010. I'm interviewing him for an award he received at the AACC convention. He goes, I don't like it. Our schools are like libraries where people just check out information and return it when they want to. I was like, now he was in charge of the community college movement from 1958 to 72, right? Like a pivotal time when all of our growth happened, when all of our presidents were being trained, when all the structures and backbone were being put in place. But that's the mentality we had, right? It's changing. It has changed. I remember one of my first things I did with George Boggs was a call to action about a completion agenda back in 2009 with NISOD and all the different groups coming together. It's been almost 10 years we've been talking about completion, and now it's really starting to become ingrained in what we do. The research through CCRC and MDRC and RAND and others have all shown us the way. So Strong Start to Finish believes that change can happen at scale, that there's enough evidence now to do it. There's no more, let me wait and see, I don't know, decision making by anecdote. We have enough evidence. And so, real briefly, the selection process, Joanna talked about it, I'll go through it quickly. We had a competitive RFP process that started where we asked systems to submit a letter of interest to us. Across a number of states, we had 47 letters of interest. Those were pared down to 9 different systems were invited to submit a full request for proposals, or RFP. After that process, we narrowed down to what we call our scaling sites, or our 4 scaling sites. And you're one of them, right? Which is huge. And it's because of the work that you've done. Johanna kind of just walked you through the arc of it. Other states aren't doing this work. Other colleges haven't committed to this kind of scale and progress and process, right? We weren't looking for like the newest place to sign on board. We weren't like somebody that was like lukewarm committal to being involved, right? Kind of like, applications that come and say, well, we'll think about planning about having a conversation, which happens. That wasn't what we're looking for. And so we were looking for systems and colleges and universities are working together to really make a difference for all the students we care about. Low-income students, students of color, adult students, the very same students that get placed in remedial education courses, right? This has a very strong equity agenda component tied into it. And we're really focused on those populations, and you are too. And that's why we picked the City University of New York, the Ohio Department of Higher Education, the University System of Georgia, right, and the State University of New York. And all of you have colleges that are doing great work in different areas, right? But all 4 systems are still working to get all the institutions to move together, just like what's happening here. So you're in a elite class of systems and institutions in the country. There is, I should say, a lot of attention on the work that you're doing. I will say that the new head of the post-secondary strategy at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, this project was like his idea. So, he was very involved in it. So Patrick Methvin, who was the Dan Greenstein, who was the Holly, So he's very interested and engaged in our work, and really has a strong belief in your ability to be successful, as do I. And so why SUNY? The collaboration between faculty and administrators is transformational. I will say we received applications where they had an advisory board and not a single faculty member was part of it. Right? Where it was a highly centralized office sitting back saying, I can fit in my office and figure out how to do this all by myself and I'll just go tell everybody what to do. Okay? You have a very collaborative and unique dynamic here at SUNY, which is a wonderful thing to see. You have expansion of both math and English success through evidence-based reforms, right? Thoughtful use of partner organizations that you're partnering with to do research and learn from your work. Committed to guided pathways, which just ties into it. A targeted intervention for adult learners through your pretext and the work you're doing there. And commitment to research via partnerships with CSCRC on institutional readiness. So those are all reasons, not the reasons, but reasons where you stood out compared to others. And so this all leads me to, and I was asked to talk a little bit about why the core principles, what are they? Remind me. I haven't read it in a while. And it's nighttime reading. If you're really, if you're an insomniac, it's a great thing to pick up every night. No. But I'll talk a little bit about core principles. But before I do that, I just want to pause. If anybody had any questions that they wanted to ask about Strong Start to date, or its history or art. All right, I waited my 7 seconds, so I'm trying. Good. Why focus on educational reforms? Lots of reasons. One of them, our first core principle, it really is that identify academic direction and supports, right? As Johanna was studying before, still too many students show up kind of undecided. And what undecided means is just take a bunch of classes until we figure out what we want to do with you, right? And we'll talk about what happens as a result of that in just a minute. This is hard to see. On the left-hand side is a study by CCRC where they looked at students who came in with a program in mind, and those 2 really tall bars, they were much more successful than the 2 bars on the right, where people came in with undecided, not knowing what to do, taking either more than 9 credit hours or not 9 credit hours, and kind of just being there for a little bit. The biggest outcome there is transferring out, right? I don't know, I'm here and I'm gone. That's not leading to success, that's not helping students be successful. This is part of your advising, which will probably be part of your next institute, is what I heard. But part is making sure when they start in the right direction. On the right-hand side is just a screenshot or an example of something that we built in Florida, because we don't see enough of these yet, which is we took the 8 meta majors. We had a state policy that grouped every major into a meta major. We had all the workforce deans and the deans come together and kind of put this all into buckets. And we created a tool where students can kind of on their phone pick their major and learn about the earnings outcomes and the graduation rates at every college. It was based upon a student's zip code, right? Like, I live here, what colleges are nearby or how far do I want to travel, and then shared all of it. We're going to see more of this kind of work where it's really important to have more students come in and at least start in a direction, right? We all know that other people want to be a registered nurse. That doesn't always work out, right? But what are the peel-off points for people in an RF program that might become not a CNA, but maybe a rad tech or some other program that has really positive outcomes that gets to help people too, right? And so there are options and opportunities out there to really focus on the front end and help students show up and make a decision. Now, I know it's hard. My nephew just enrolled at college, and I had this whole conversation with him, right? Ethan, what do you want to do? I don't know, I kind of like cars. Okay, well, do you like cars or do you kind of like cars, right? So I actually worked in reverse. We did a process of elimination. I'm like, do you like to give blood? No. Okay, medical out. And so we went through this, it's advising, right? Narrow down what they didn't want to be to get them what they did want to be. And so that's an important part, and we know it makes a difference in the success of students as the research evidence shows. The second is that they need to enroll in college English and math. So the slide on the left is the one that still boggles my mind, and I was actually on the phone with the U.S. Department of Education about it on Friday. because I still don't understand it. I understand it, but I don't understand it. So what it shows is there's this national sample of students called NIPSAS, which is all of our federal student financial aid policies based upon these databases, right? NIPSAS in the beginning post-secondary student survey, my IR person, right? And what these people in their office did was create this little, like a multiple measure that kind of groups people based upon their likeliness of being successful, right? Or prepared. And so there are 3 buckets: weakly prepared, moderately prepared, and strongly prepared. And then they show the percent of students taking remedial math by sector, right? And so the blue bars on the left are community colleges. The green bars on the right are four-year institutions. And so for the weakly prepared, it seems about 65 and 67%, like both institution types are placing students in remedial math about the same amount, right? This is 0304. This is before all this stuff began, right? It's an old data set. That's why I was on the phone with the U.S. Department of Ed because I want a new data set. In the middle, students who are moderately prepared, 61% to 34%. Nearly twice as many students who, on paper, mathematically, using the same measures, were moderately prepared, were placed in remedial education as compared to what they're at the four-year institution. It's like taking the same student, picking them up and saying, you're at a university, you're not remedial math. Pick you up and put you at a community college, you're remedial math. Makes no sense to me, right? It doesn't. And these are right here, the measures they use. They use.
I'm so glad you did that. That's the kind of thing I would have done.
I apologize. But they used, let me go back. Pre-college indicators, high school GPA, highest mathematics course in high school, and college admission test scores to create these groups, right? And then all the way again for the strongly prepared, right? 13% of strongly prepared students were still placed into remedial education at universities, but 40% at colleges. So something doesn't make sense. Not only should strongly prepared students, you wonder why are they in remedial math, but mathematically, if these people are the same on a piece of paper, the only difference is where they enroll. So why are we placing so many students into remedial education when they don't need to be there? But that was our history, right? That's what the data show. These are data people sitting in an office crunching numbers. The number on the right shows the impact of multiple measures. It was a study in California where they implemented multiple measures, and your study just came out, so I want to create one of these for your work as well. I'll talk about in a second. But it shows when you use multiple measures, Black African American students and Latino students are more likely to be placed in college level math courses, right? Again, an equity component, right? When you take a more holistic view of somebody, once you know it, that more students are ready for math and really think they are. And so we really need to think about and talk about this conversation, and I know your multiple measure works, that's why you're a national leader, you're ahead of it, but there's a lot of places that are still having a hard time having this conversation, and that evidence, I think, is about as strong as we can find. And there's others like it. The third is providing supports. You know, some people say co-rec, stat-way, quant-way. Strong start to finish is like model agnostic. You're doing Emporium, you're doing co-rec, we're not forcing a model on anybody. We know there's models out there that are better than others. And here's two pieces of research that show the outcomes are just so much better for students when you provide supports for them and put them in a co-rec course or put them in some kind of college level math course or English course that has some supports built around it. Now the model, how you do that is hard, it varies, right? Some places are merging their math and two math courses together, Dev Ed and a co-rec. Some are doing a lab. Again, everything we've seen, we continue to read the research. I still serve on the editorial board of the Community College Journal Research and Practice, the Community College Review, and the Journal of Ed Finance. I just last night got a paper submitted that I have to review for Dev Ed work, right? Like the research, and invited to be on a panel about research with a bunch of researchy people, right? Ed SRI coming up soon. Like time and time again, the research shows these models work. Are they perfect? No. Are you going to get 100%? No. Are you going to do a lot better? Yes, absolutely. And it works across English and math courses. Because really this is our problem. This is what we call our principle 4, right? Which is the stickiest one of all of them, I'll be honest. These two data points just show that of the students who get into developmental education, especially those students when we don't use some kind of, remember those 2 slides ago, the students that were all placed in there when they shouldn't have been? Or, I'm not sure. It's an open question why they were placed in remedial education at a college as compared to a university when they had the same academic characteristics and preparation. right? And we know who those students are, right? Low-income students, students of color, adult students. Within 6 years, only half of them completed their DevEd coursework. 6 years. That's not your graduation rate. That's just like after 6 years when they first started, did they ever get out of the sequence? So we'll show in a second. There's some of these sequences that are very, very long sequences, right? That we have questions. Now, does that mean that every single student can take college algebra? No, and that's going to be the tension and struggle you're going to have on your campuses, right? This is the sticky widget part of what we call Principle 4. What's the right percent? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you. I was on the phone with somebody about that last week, right? Like, do you think like 10% of students really need DevEd, or is it 20, or is it 15? You're going to have to look at your own campus and learn, right, and do better, but I'll tell you, it's not as many as it is right now. And then you'll see, just by compressing the sequence, you get a lot more students through gateway courses, which means if you pass English 1101 or Math 101, I'll just call them those general terms right now because it varies by institution and by state, they're much more likely to be successful and graduate, to get into their major, to start taking courses that they actually want to study, right? And this is all work that it's nothing new, that's all work that we know. So this is part of my fun slide. For a long time we've been thinking about things on the left. Like, it's really hard to read, and I understand that. That's a slide of all the different math courses a student can take at an institution. I removed the name of the institution to protect the innocent. But it starts off with whole numbers and fractions and decimals with Math 10. And at the very bottom it has fundamentals of elementary math and Math 211, so I don't know the difference between those. But you can see there's a whole lot of math courses that these students have the opportunity to take. And I would say none of them are credit bearing until we get down to the very bottom. Right? Because these are all 096, 095, 065, 40, 20, 10, 52, 25. That's a whole lot of math to take, right? And I know this institution. I know the former president there. Wonderful person. But this is how it's been conceived for a long time is, here's my math sequences and how my math courses tie together. On the right, you see something that's a little bit more aligned to the Guided Pathways work or your programs of studies or meta majors, right? You see math courses that are, why they still have some developmental math courses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 of them, and they said they're 1 credit each, as opposed to 3, so still 7 credit hours, but they're 7 1 credit hour blocks. They all tie in and link into some kind of pathway, right? Some kind of meta major that says this is the right math for there. The open question that you're going to struggle with, and I think a lot of people do, and it kind of, for me it's just an open question, right? Is this intermediate algebra? And half the states I'm working, not half, but the states I'm working with, it's developmental education. And the next state I work with, it's not. And in some court cases, they leave it out this little ambiguous nether place, right? Of what is it? You get Davis Jenkins talking about it. He says it's not ideal, right? He has some maybe stronger words to say. But you see that, so it's still there in that slide, but something to think about. But nonetheless, you see the difference. But one's thinking about how does this math course and set of courses actually lead to some kind of major, and what's the right math for each major? That's a better place to be for a student. And it also allows you to contextualize the curriculum a little bit, right, for those math courses. Maybe use examples that are actually tied to their major, and all the things that we know are pedagogically sound practices. And the sixth and last one is using data effectively. Now, this is the hardest part, because tracking students in this way, right, and those without a whole lot of IR capacity, I understand, it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, even when, these are conversations we were having when we were in Florida. How do we actually track them through courses? Because we have to have a flag that shows what their major is at the beginning, if they're taking the right courses, and code every course to every meta major. I mean, it's not easy, right? But it's where we all need to go. We recognize it. We also recognize that Strong Start, and President Van Wagner and I have talked about this, that we also need to talk about the ROI and return on investment and this type of stuff. So what we're going to be doing is talking about the financing and how it impacts your business model when we start to undertake these types of reforms. So those are the core principles, right? Things that you've bought into, you've agreed to do, to change your placement policies, to think about your your course sequences and how they tie into different majors, right? To think about the English ALP or the Statway Quantway or whatever it is that you think is best. And we're just here to be support, right? I have some really, really intelligent people I get to work with who spend their life thinking and studying this stuff and working with faculty. We have a knowledge manager, her name's Maxine Roberts. She studied with Estella Bensimon at USC, and she's very much embedded in all this work. We have an expert advisory board that advises us. And why do they do that? Because we're waiting for your phone call. That's it. Waiting for you to pick up the phone and say, I'm stuck. I need help. Right? You've got Jesse, you've got a lot of people that are helping you. If you need somebody else, if you need something else, that's what we're here to do. Right? We're actively in the process of culling through all the research to pull together the best information to help you make decisions. We have things called, we have a resource library on our website that every Wednesday, a lot of those figures you saw we call them points of interest. They're one-pagers. They're all on our website, and there's a narrative underneath it and a link to the study where it came from, so you can fact check everything we said, right? And those come out every Wednesday. If you follow @_strong_start, you'll get a notice every Wednesday that they came up, right? Because there's enough evidence. I committed to do 132 of these things over the course of my grant, right? Every week, I've got my knowledge manager writing a one-pager that's reviewing the research and telling a story, because there's that much evidence out there. And you're going to be providing evidence to us. We're going to start highlighting your college. We're going to start highlighting your system. We're going to start highlighting your work, right, for a national audience. And so we have weekly points of interest. These are all still available in our resource library, but if you want to know right when it happens, there's there. We're in the process of developing what are called Steps to Success papers. And we'll be looking at to some of you if you want to actually author them. Right now we have some national leaders in the process of writing them for us. It's great for us to come say, go do co-rec. What does that mean? Like, how did somebody else do it? What were the enabling conditions? Did they just have a president change or not? Is the state law allowed to do these things? Right? What were the milestone steps that they took to do this work? So we're going to put together papers and tools that are geared towards you as our audience, not other researchers. Right? Spend a lot of my life working with people on the ground, doing the hard work every day. And all we want to do is empower you to continue to have the courage you have every day to make a difference in the lives of students in your local communities. Right? It's incumbent upon us not to just put papers out because we feel like putting our names on things. Right? I tell my staff, it's like, our job is to empower other people as we do our work, to make it accessible, to make it understandable, to give you the tools and skills and resources you need to be successful. So you'll see those coming out. We're also going to be working on strategic investment impacts, which is around return on investment and how do you make the business case for reforms, and or not, or does this not work, right? I mean, I'll never forget, I sat with David Bain. You know David? Everybody know David Bain? So David is my boss. Such a smart guy. He has a dictionary on his desk, so if you say something, he'll look it up too. His vocabulary is amazing, right? We got a phone call from the New York Times about that. This is 2009. I said, David, the New York Times just called me, and they want to know what the national number is for remedial education. He said, okay, we'll go find it. I said, okay, yes, sir. I go back to my desk, I do my research, I pull it up, I go, I found two numbers. He goes, you did? What do you mean two numbers? I go, well, 42% is the number of students who take it the first year after high school. But if you wait 2 years, it's 60%. I said, which number do you want me to give them? 42% or 60%? Right? And this is one of those pivotal moments in your professional growth. So I'm like, how are we going to, do we have a bias here? What are we doing? How does this really work? Right? I'm in a big tower with big things, going to meetings at the White House. Like, I want to understand what's happening. He said, Chris, give them both. Let them decide. Right? And that's always stuck with me. I'm like, here's the evidence. Here's what we know. Is it perfect? No. Is it helpful? Yes. Is it directional? Absolutely. And how do we take the next step to move forward? So we're committed to doing that. We also have something called an education community, which is an online platform where we try and post a lot of information and tools, and we'll do webinars and stuff like that. But that's a little overview of Strong Start to Finish. We're very happy to have all of you a part of it, right? Again, as Johan has said, you're already doing the work, right? This grant doesn't have any extra strings attached to it. All they have to report to us, the only data point that we really care about, there's one. The number of students passing gateway math and English in their first year of study. That's it. I got rid of all the other ones. When I got there, we had this whole long list, and I said, no, we're singularly focused on one thing, disaggregated by race, ethnicity. Full-time and part-time. The outcome measures cohort. right? All your students, not just the like 6% that are in your first time full-time cohort that you can kind of massage a little bit. Everybody. Is a number of students who are benefiting increasing for everybody. And that's it. And then that's pretty much your reporting. I mean, then some things about what policies are in place to help move that and change that and things like that. But that's it. That's what we're solely focused on. That's what these funders are focused on. That's where the eyes of the nation are on you. I get phone calls every week from another state that wants to join. I don't have that much money, right? And they weren't competitive, right? You all are doing great work. Have the courage to keep it up. I'm sure you have harder questions ahead, right? It's not going to be easy. But know that you're not alone in the fight. Know that when you're sitting in your office and you're wondering, gosh, does anybody care? Does anything really matter? It matters immensely to us. Pick up the phone and call me. I'll talk to you, right? And we'll get through it together. But I just want to say thank you all very much for your dedication to the students in New York. I look forward to working with you as the project continues forward. Thank you.
So is he as terrific as I said he would be? Join me. Yeah. Chris is actually going to be with us until tomorrow, and he's going to have a few remarks as well for our Guided Pathways team for our institute. Just a couple things I wanted to say before we move to Deb Meckel, who's going to talk about SUNY's participation in multiple measures. So your presentation was really right on point to get us there. Just one. First of three things. The first, enrollment. Most of the conversations that we are having with the leadership of all of our campuses is enrollment, and the strength of our institutions. This weekend, we had the Association of New York Community College Trustees Association. So it was the trustees of all of our 30 community colleges. Many of our presidents were there, along with the trustees. And the number one thing is we're worried about recruiting. We're talking about different programs, and we're talking about bringing in the adult learner and all the rest. The number one way to have strong campuses is to keep the students engaged. And you were talking about the numbers. I found that fascinating. We know, even though we don't talk about it, our numbers for remediation, certainly when we started this work, were closer to 70% of the students were taking one or more remediation courses. And they come in, but they don't complete their programs. And so if we really want strong institutions, this is critically important. Of course, it matters to no one more than it matters to the students who invest in education and truly want success. We have 5 campus presidents here who have all pledged to be supportive of this work. But I will tell you that when we had our first conversations about the Strong Start to Finish award, we thought we would get a lot of questions or even some hesitancy. The only thing we got were questions that were as follows. What exactly do we have to do for this money? What do we have to do that we're not doing now? Or what extra thing do we have to do because it was too good to be true? When is someone going to come in and support the work you're already doing? That's now. So when we talked about the Student Success Center many years ago and the idea of focusing in on collaborating and bringing our work together, that's happening now and it's paying off. And so very, very proud of us all to be a part of this. And with that, I think multiple measures is going to make a big difference for us, again, as we look at retaining our students. So with that, Deb, you're going to share with us what's hot off the press.
Ladies and gentlemen, Deb Meckel.
Yay! And thank you again, Chris. You are the awesomest.
So,
He gets us.
as you might guess, there's a story behind this. You know that old expression, there's nothing more dangerous than somebody who's been to a conference? There's nothing more dangerous than somebody from system who's been to a conference. A few years ago, I went to a conference where Tristan Denley, and some of you may know who he is, was doing a presentation on the use of predictive analytics in advisement. And he had developed a kind of a program where he said, based on patterns of behavior and all the rest of it, he could predict within half a grade point how students would do in any given course. And they were using that information for advisement with an on-phone app thing that could do that. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. So I went home and I cogitated on that for a while, and I had a couple of probably midnight types of waking up and saying, what if? So the idea was, what if we, instead of what Davis Jenkins very fondly calls inaccuplacer, what if instead of that, we were to do something more positively predictive? Not to pigeonhole students, but to try to figure out what they really need in a more accurate way than we can with Accuplacer. So that's where this idea came from. You can blame Tristan Denley for that, because it was his original idea. So a colleague of mine approached CCRC, and we said, what if we could actually run some algorithms and figure out what would be the best kind of placement for students? Would that make a difference in terms of whether they were able to get more directly into credit-bearing work or not? And that is where this was born. They got a grant from IES, and the next thing you knew, I was having breakfast with 7 CAOs at the CAO meeting, and said, how would you like to participate in this? So for anybody who is wondering why they didn't get selected for this participation in this study, is because you weren't at breakfast with me that day. That's where this all came from. So Niagara, Cayuga, Onondaga, Rockland, Jefferson, Westchester, and Schenectady. 7 institutions who are willing to participate with CCRC. CCRC developed algorithms based on past performance of students, and then went through a random controlled study to figure out whether or not those things were actually making a difference. What we have that came out very recently, I have not read the whole thing yet, it's like that. You have, you're welcome, the executive summary. So, I'd like to just highlight a couple of the high points from this, because I think this is very promising. The challenge for this study actually is that so many of our institutions are doing a lot of things. So we couldn't have a true indication of what was going on because we're continually moving the bar. We don't want to wait for 5 years for the result of the study to implement things like QuantWay and ALP and all these other things, guided pathways. So that's context for what we found. The numbers are contingent on all these other changes that are being made consistently. The other thing that I've asked for, what they ended up doing was to create a different algorithm for each institution, which is not what I wanted. I wanted something much more broadly usable, something that could be generalizable to other institutions. So what I'm hoping we will get out of this is the interim report. What I'm hoping we will get out of this eventually is some guidance on how to weight the various aspects. What we do know categorically from all kinds of evidence is that high school GPA is still the best predictor of success in college. So what the algorithms were based on was high school GPA in addition to other measures such as placement tests and things like that. We have an additional challenge within the system, and this speaks to some of the data that you mentioned, Chris. So in the QuantWay project, we have found that many of our state-operated campuses, our senior institutions, don't really have remedial courses. So they're not placing students in remedial courses because they don't call them remedial courses. Audrey, am I right? They don't call them remedial, but as you look at the content, they may very well actually be remedial courses. It's just that the faculty get to determine what's remedial and what isn't, and they decided, we don't have remediation, we have this. So that muddies the water additionally. Okay, so, number 3. See,
I'm going to put it over here.
I disconnected that in the last session I was in. So
still holding strong.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to give you some of the highlights, and in the context of what I've asked for is something more generalizable. Also, Elizabeth Barnett, who's one of the primary researchers on this project, is going to be talking with the chief academic officers at their fall meeting. So I'm fully expecting that we're going to see some strong interest in doing something very different. The other conversation, and the term college readiness is fraught with so many different things. But in conversations with SED about this, I have mentioned that we've been doing this project. I don't know what's going to come out of that either. They want us to really say, this is what college readiness means. Here's your cut. If they do high school, you're good. The other conversation we're having with them is about the availability of the high school transcript at a much earlier point, because that's been a real sticking point for a lot of folks. So, having said all that, many of the students who were placed by this method were placed differently than they would have been under the status quo largely Accuplacer system. So in math, 14% of these students placed higher than they would have under a test-only system. 7% placed lower, actually, which is interesting, because I don't know what makes that happen. In English, the numbers are staggering. 41%, 41.5% placed higher, which says something very serious about the English testing that's been going on. These students were 3.1 and 12.5 percentage points more likely than control group students to both enroll in and complete with a grade of C or higher a college-level math or English course in the first term. So we're seeing impacts with completion that are connected with that. Okay. Yes, where did that go? I lost my bullet points here. Hold on 1 second. There we are. Okay. Demographically and social justice-wise, we have women appearing to benefit more than men from this type of placement with regard to college math placement, enrollment, and completion. So that's interesting. They're placing higher. Black and Hispanic students appear to benefit more than white students from this type of placement in English, on the college-level English course placement and enrollment outcomes, but not on completion, which actually goes more toward the other types of interventions that we're working on. So that is the nutshell version of this. I think we're seeing some very positive possibilities here, and if we can come up with more generalizable information, we will certainly be sharing that as soon as we have it. The final report is going to be released in 2019, and it's going to examine range of outcomes for all 3 cohorts. So there are 3 cohorts of students who have gone through this process, or will have. So they're going to be looking at completion of introductory college-level courses, persistence, and accumulation of college credits over the long term. And so that's where that project is going. I think there's a lot of real potential there. And we all know that we need to have more students placed in credit-bearing work than we currently do. So, with that.
Does anybody have questions for Deb while I'm...
Breakfast is a very important meal, I'm just saying.
Okay, so I get to tell you a little bit about how this is all going to work. So I think that'll be the next conversation we'll have on the project approach, the timeline, and some data. We're not going to get into all the data. Some of the colleges that are participating have provided their outcomes data that we requested, and some of the course listing data. We thank you for that. Some of you are telling us you're going to get it to us. We do have some resources here today, and Chris and Audrey is in the back. If you have questions, and then also I'm going to put Kimberly on the spot for a second. Monroe, their institutional research person, offered to be a resource for anybody putting together the data. So I just want to say that, because although Chris is saying it's a smaller amount, there is still a data request with this grant work. So we don't want to say nothing. Okay, so I want to quickly go through this. So the project approach is, you are the first cohort. There are going to be 2 other cohorts of colleges. So we have about 38 colleges in the system, both community colleges and colleges involved in math pathways or developmental English, that are eligible for the Strong Start to Finish funding. And we know that not everybody, it's a totally opt-in. Your presidents opted you in, so thank you, presidents who are here, for doing that. So it's an opt-in. So we have 38 possible campuses. We're hoping to fund 30 campuses throughout the course of the project. The focus, as we've said, is guided pathways, math pathways, developmental English, and the core principles. Just to tell you what's in your packets on the table, you have a list of the folks today that are here in attendance. You have a list of your campus and which area of focus you're involved in. So if you're involved in math pathways, developmental English, we also put P-TECH on here, although you're not getting funding specifically for P-TECH or technical pathways. We hope those of you who have it will use it in, we may have some institutes and some webinars associated with that. So the graphic looks like this that you have to tell you. Additionally, we have a list of your math pathways and English leads. So if you're sitting here thinking, who on my campus is responsible for this, you have a list of those folks. And Matt and Mark can also help with that if you're questioning who's involved. Because one of the things we really want to do is underscore the integration of all of these things on campuses. So not only are we committing to do that at the system level, but because that's why we're all here today, is to sort of kick this off, but we ask that you started to think about it on the campus level as well. Okay, so then one thing that you're going to be really interested in, I'm going to talk about is this is September 2018 kickoff meeting, cohort 1, SUNY project overview sheet. So this tells you about what exactly we're offering through the grant, so cohort technical assistance and innovation grants. So funding for your individual college strategies and also funding to help support things like, do we want to bring in someone from CCRC? Do we want to bring in, is Elizabeth, right? To do something with the cohort, we can do that through the grant. Do we want to do something more on holistic advising with Achieving the Dream? Because they do have a very big focus there. As a cohort, we can do that. You will be getting a survey from us to try to find out what you all think would be valuable, rather than us just developing it for you. So we're going to ask for input on the technical assistance. There's also some funding in for institutes. Math Pathways has an institute model. English has also done some work in bringing folks together, and you're involved in an institute model now with Guided Pathways. It seems to work, and it seems to create cohorts that can interact with each other, so we're keeping that model for right now. If there are other ideas that you all have, we want to hear them. So like Chris said, on the national level, we're feeling the same way at the state level. We don't have all the best ideas at system, obviously, and we want to hear from you what will work. We're giving each of your campuses a $25,000 innovation grant to work as you see fit in your campus and your specific areas, focused on Guided Pathways, Math Pathways, English, or any of the core principles Chris talked about. You also have a handout. It's the core principles, so if you want to take that back and take a look at it, that's in your packets as well. So those are the two areas we are committing to assist with in the grant. What you'll see there are next steps. We've asked, as we said, for data outcomes and course listing for reporting. We're going to do a survey of technical assistance, and then we're going to have project plans and budgets for your campus innovation grants, but not dissimilar to those of you who are involved in the Math Pathways, Quantway, Statway project plans or in the English plans. We're not trying to make this burdensome, but we do want you as a campus and a college to commit to a strategy so that you can evaluate how that's going to work over the course of the grant. So the overall grant, March 2018 through March 2021, the cohort launches today. The data and course list and baseline data sheets were due before the September 28th. Some of you have asked for extensions. We can definitely try to help with that. We're trying not to make that burdensome to your IR team or anybody that's going to look at gateway course information. But I think, like Chris said, we want to make sure you're committing to thinking about the data piece of this before you're making some of the large-scale decisions on the strategies you're going to pursue within these areas. As I said, technical assistance, we hope to have that done in October, and then November to solidify your grant agreements and get the funding out. The funding will be coming from the SUNY Research Foundation, so it's very similar to the Quantway Statway funding you received. One thing I want to call your attention to, that's the front side of this sheet. On the back side, there is a list of deliverables, and we won't go over them all today, and budget narrative categories that are pretty typical of what we do for these type of grants. I'm going to ask you in teams over the course of the next 3 days, or when you get back to campus, to take a look. If there's anything that's really concerning to you, to let us know. But it's not dissimilar to what we've been talking about in terms of how you might proceed. So participating in the cohort, providing the data request, developing a campus leadership team as you've done with Guided Pathways, to looking at specific strategies, to helping us decide the technical assistance, to the scale of adoption assessment, which all your campuses have already filled out, so we've done that once. But we want to do that across the whole grant cycle. And cohort 1, Monroe, and some folks are gonna be helpful in getting that second application out. But if everybody understands the scale of adoption or has questions about it, you can see us after and we can get you copies of that. And finally, workshops and things on campus that help take the folks from the institutes and actually get the information disseminated on campus. We don't know the best way to do that. We're hoping that all of you can think about that, and you probably have ideas now from the Guided Pathways work and how you can get everybody on campus working in the same area towards these reform efforts, because we know that communication of this, it's great to come to an event, but how do you bring it back and how do you really get that out into the campus community? So I think we're going to do some things in the institute model to share that information across campuses, and we want to underscore that with this work. So those are the kinds of pieces here that will be helpful. So if you take a look at that, I'm not going to go through line by line, we don't have the time today, but wanted to give you a sense of the timeline. So as we said, the course lists, you each got individual emails sent to your presidents and copied to some folks. If you didn't get it and need a copy, we'd be happy to send it to you. What Chris was talking about is really having you go through the exercise of getting your developmental education, math, and English courses and the catalog descriptions, and then the gateway math and English courses and catalog descriptions and prerequisites. So I think, Deb, we came up with the idea in our system there won't be many prerequisite courses, but if you have any that are credit-bearing courses, to list those. So that's one Excel spreadsheet that we've provided. The other is an outcomes template. There's specific college examples of that, an instruction sheet. So if you have questions about that, or if you've started that, Audrey, I think, can stay a few minutes extra. They're helping us in system institutional research to take all this data in and then put together some models for how we're going to look at that data moving forward. So, and then Chris can answer any real specific questions because the data is his area of focus and interest, so he can definitely help with that. Along with a lot of questions from all the sites. So then finally, there are upcoming events, and I won't take too much time because we do want to make sure there's time for questions or comments. In October, we have a Student Success Center Network Summit coming up at the University of Albany. This is for the PIC projects in student success. You're all invited to it. There's a handout in your packets about that if you're interested. November 2nd, we're doing a Math Pathways and a Co-Rec English joint forum on November 2nd of Math and English. And then on November 2nd through the 4th, SUNY Math Pathways Fall Forum will be happening. Those two are in Saratoga Springs. And then January, we'll be back together for Institute 4. And by then, we should have an understanding of what additional information and technical assistance you all need. Can we do that within the Institute model, or do we need to do separate webinars for Strong Start to Finish? We're trying not to overburden, as Johanna said, in additional things. But if it is information and help we can do through this grant process, we want to make sure we have that available to you. So those are the areas and things that are coming up in the next couple of months. So I'm going to pause here. I know we've shared a lot of information. There's been a lot of talking today. Questions and or concerns or anything else that folks wanted to share about this process?
Can you send us a copy of this?
Of the PowerPoint? Yeah, absolutely. Chris, can we share your PowerPoint as well? So we'll share Johanna and Chris's and the slides that I just shared with you. That two-pager that you see has a lot of the detail. The other thing we want to say too, I know this came up one of the campuses, you follow your own curriculum process for faculty. We're not suggesting you're going to change anything, but on individual campuses, your shared governance process, your curriculum process, if you're going to change anything like that, we leave that up to you all to do that in whatever process you have on campus. It's really important we say that. We're not trying to pick a strategy. We're not all going to do the same strategies, obviously. So that's the nice flexibility about the core principles. There's 6 of them. And they're basically embedded in the already existing things that we're already doing. So that's kind of important to take away. We're not strongly recommending one way or another. Your 10 campuses with all different student populations and different considerations. So we want to make sure that that message is loud and clear. Other questions that you have? Yep, Julie.
Did you give us a specific date for when the budget and project plan are due?
Well, I don't want to because I want to give you enough time once we get it out. So once we get it out, I'm hoping that this survey is going to go out in October. The survey will be first, I would think by the end of October we want to know. And then I'm thinking by the mid to end of November for the agreement. But that page on the flip side, so this particular one, deliverables and budget, really look that over because that'll be your scope of work. There'll be a project plan template so you can fill in your project plan. But if there's any issues, the agreement will have a lot of legalese and then this in the back, which is what we expect, and along with the data templates you already received. But I'm thinking the end of November. We'll try to give you enough time. We do apologize on the time frame, but we want to get this work started. We've already started the work, but we wanted to actually make sure we were hopeful that the cohort 1 of Guided Pathways would be the same cohort for Strong Start, but we needed to talk about that first. Other questions for Johanna or Chris? Michael and Randy, Michael and Randy have been a part of our leadership discussion. Did you two want to say anything about the
Michael, go ahead if you have.
I just think this is an exciting opportunity for us to really take a lot of what we're doing to the next place. I hope that folks will use this as an opportunity to get more people on your campus involved in the work that's happening in your location. So being able to take some of the resources from Strong Start to Finish and to align them with the current strategies, specifically our 10 campuses are employing with respect to how we're moving guided pathways at our institutions. I think it's a unique opportunity to kind of grow the folks on your campus that are currently maybe involved at the margins. And now is another opportunity to broaden sort of the scope of engagement. And so I hope that we will all take a real good opportunity to pull some of the resources, some of the intellectual capital out there for our work that we're going to be doing in Guided Pathways. And particularly since we have access to the Strong Start to Finish network, all of the computer resources, all of the articles, all of the blogs, all of that information will be very helpful to the various teams that are actually doing the work of Guided Pathways implementation on your campus. So they are a repository of a lot of great information that we don't have to do Google searches to pull all of this stuff together. They and their resources have pulled that together for us. So I encourage people to learn how to access the Strong Start to Finish site and the resources and to disseminate the good information that will be helpful to our different groups.
And I would just add, as all of our colleges get deeper into using data, I think we're recognizing increasingly so the miles that we have to go and the transformation that does need to occur, the tweaking at the edges is no longer what our students need. And we do need to fundamentally rethink so many parts of our operation for our students. And I think that particularly with Guided Pathways, as we're all finding, Guided Pathways disproportionately has a positive effect on low income and students of color. So that work is so important at scale, and our colleges are trying so hard. We're getting leaner and leaner with each passing budget, it seems. So to finally have an opportunity with an initiative that brings resources to support stuff we're already doing is a real powerful artifact to hopefully galvanize folks on our college campuses to say, oh, it is integrated and it is not just one more thing, but it is a true college-wide commitment to really rethink some fundamental processes for us. So thanks to Johanna and Jennifer for getting us here, and Chris for believing in us and supporting us, and yeah, exciting days ahead.
So we had some discussion time, but I want to give people a break for those who are going to stay from Linda Carp. Are there other questions or other things that you want to raise while we're here together?
I have a question.
Okay.
What can SUNY system do to be more helpful to you as we move forward? I mean, we talked about the importance of this work, we spoke about the resources, but this is hard work. There's no two ways about it. This is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would have been doing it a long time ago. What is it that we can do? And if you don't know, if you don't want to say now, you can tell us over the next 3 days, but the part of this conversation was to not only see what you think, but to figure out what we can do to be more helpful to you. So, do you have any burning recommendations? Good, yay.
I think just, I'm reminded because Matt at our campus from Onondaga for 6 hours, and I didn't think I could get 45 English faculty members, full and part-time, in a room professionally developing with each other for 6 hours on a Friday. So that infusion as part of our work is really important. So the professional development piece of this has to continue.
Thank you. That's helpful for us to carry back. Anything else? Any other recommendations?
I think also to help connect us, all together so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. I think that's really critical because we have a tendency, as assistants sometimes to be a little disconnected. So I think if we could, share our ideas so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, I think that would be great too.
Good. Thanks, Susan. Anyone else?
What's resonating for me is your comment about why some go lower in the multiple measures. And I'd be curious to have conversations among us gathered here, just what our hypothesis might be as to why multiple measures would mean a decrease for some students in terms of their placing in college level courses. So I guess discussion time.
Maybe good, good test taker, but that would not be me. But Paul.
You can see him. I do know that in October, Deb, we're going to be talking, I think, about placement tools. I think it would be really helpful if all 30 community colleges send to Deb, how do we place students? What's the cut scores for AccuPlacer? How do we exempt students from AccuPlacer? I think that the more that we look at multiple measures and the less students who have to sit for AccuPlacer, I think the rates for student success will go up. But that's a hypothesis, but it'd be helpful to know what everyone else is doing for placement.
To your point, Paul, I just want to say, thanking our IR team, one of the things we realized is that by looking at the data, much of the data in the beginning was to figure out what we needed to tackle first, and since then, we've been looking at data primarily for reporting purposes and to continue to receive funding and those kinds of things. But it's amazing what happens as you continue to look at data. And without singling out a campus or an initiative, we were looking at some students who were getting some phenomenal resources, and then they were ready to go into credit-bearing courses, but then some of them didn't. It was like, how did this happen? How did it happen? Because no one was following it. No one knew. So part of this process is going to be to help inform the work we're doing in a real way. Deb?
One of the other things that comes up with the work on placement is policy. So how many institutions actually have a policy that students who are targeted for remediation have to take those courses in the beginning? I know my institution didn't have that. We had students taking their remedial courses just before graduation, which sort of defeats the purpose. So I think the policies around placement are every bit as important as the processes themselves.
Perfect. Yes.
And to piggyback on Paul's points regarding AccuPlacer, given that everybody's in that transition to the next generation tests, and we've not had guidance regarding concordance tables and stuff, what other things have folks been doing on their campuses to try and move some away, but also integrate what exists with these new tests?
Perfect. So we can learn from each other. Exactly what this is all about. Yes?
Just picking up on some of those points and Sue's point about the collaboration and learning from each other. As the colleges go about their work, a lot of trees, missing the forest maybe, because we're just doing the work. You and Jennifer are talking to all of the colleges and staying in touch. As you come across bright spots, if you might make mention, we might not think it's something of note. You come across that and spotlight that for us so that we can add to the library, to the resource library, and work with Chris to say, oh, we are on to something with this. So.
Perfect. Very helpful.
And if I could just add, Johanna.
And then Julie,
Can
you
I
have
just
one more?
add to that?
Yeah,
So a lot of the scale of adoption, Kimberly and Andrea and some of us that have been working, Mary Rose, on the Guided Pathways Institutes, have thought about how do we capture what you're doing on the scale of adoption assessment to really understand where you think you're working at scale or at least closer to scale, so we can kind of revisit that, because that will help us identify where those bright spots are. but we'll need help from the coaches, the Guided Pathways coaches in the room. Thank you for being here today, because they're trying to help also to connect some of this information. So if you look back over your scale of adoption as teams with your coaches to look at where can you identify some of those things, we can collect that. So we'll use the systems in place we've already done, but we can definitely do that.
These are good recommendations. Julie, did you have another one?
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to look at conceptual frameworks for making organizational change. You know, and ATD and Aspen are doing some work on that. And it can be helpful to have common language across us as a knowledge community and across your campus. So that's maybe on the technical assistance end. It would be interesting to bring some folks in to talk more about that.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes, please.
Hey, Julie, good to see you.
Hey, Chris, you too.
It's been a while since I've seen
It
you.
has.
Just on that note, and I think it's important to share, and I share that with your leadership team, that we are working very hard to work closely with JFF, CCA, Aspen, ATD, to make sure that we're working in a coordinated fashion to bring the work forward. One of the last things I did before I left board is get a student success center, so I know full well the student success center. I wrote the grant, did the whole thing and worked it together. But I want to share with you that there's like this, not only are we inspired by all of you working together, but we're trying hard to work together. So like Bruce Vandal and I were just emailing before I got here because we're trying to set up a call. Mike Collins and Naima Mitchell came to our offices. We sat down for 6 hours together to figure out how we're going to work together, kind of like the fact. So, there's an effort amongst us too, I'd say the big us, to really come together, and you'll be hearing in the future a thing called like network and network hubs, but without getting too far into it. Strong Start is more than just a granting agency. We're going to be involved in other aspects, which is kind of just had that slide about our scaling work. There's likely to be some more news coming in the not too distant future about the work that we're trying to pull together, but we recognize that on the ground it's hard because you hear so many different initiatives and who I partner with and how does it come together. So we're working hard to try and figure out how to get everybody back together about the core principles. How do we all come together and provide you some kind of consistent opportunities that aren't diametrically opposed with each other, right? So you're not feeling like you're pulled in two different directions with two different initiatives.
Perfect. Chris, one of the things I think, and I think the colleges here would really appreciate it, I know we at System have talked about it, is the data that we have to report on these. Like for Math Pathways, it's a separate set of data. For Strong Start, for Jobs for the Future, it's going to be something different. Many of you are involved in AACC's voluntary framework of accountability with the key performance indicators for the Guided Pathways work. There's some way that national folks can come together that makes it a little easier. From the system office, we're trying to aggregate our data, but I know that it falls on the campuses to sort of do that and try to look at, what that is. So, we've asked JFF the same thing. So we're going to continue to ask, a semblance of help in terms of that. We're not looking at the same things over and over in different ways, that we have a more unified way of looking at the data. So I just want to say that because I know the campuses have said that. I'm taking it on from all of you. I've heard this. And I'm sharing it with Chris in front of you. So if you want to underscore that, that's helpful. But we appreciate the need of the funders, and this is a slice, and there are 4 sites. We get that it becomes a challenge to do the data analysis based on the different slices. So.
And what I'll share with you, we've talked about a little bit, and I'll just put it out there for all of you. It's an open conversation. This challenge, right, is real, right? So 10 years ago when I worked at AACC, I sat in the room with Jen Ingold, who was running Access to Success out of the Institute for High Policy, and Jamie Mayer-Sotis, and Michelle Aisha Cooper, and we all sat down and had all these initiatives going. And as a member, you guys are members of AACC. I'm like, how can we get to one data set, right? And it just never happened. Well, Jen Ingold is now the Deputy Director in charge of Measurement, Learning, and Evaluation for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So what they're trying to do, and what's an open opportunity that you can discuss, and I'm happy to have the conversations, is the National Student Clearinghouse collects student level data right now through the reverse transfer work, which is course level data, right? We're talking with them. 2 of the 4 sites are actually working with them right now to figure out if there's a way we can extract the data from the National Student Clearinghouse where you don't have to run your reports. JFF's talking with them. We're all talking to say, can we just use a data system that all of you report the same data to, but it's extracted in different ways for different grant programs, right? And you'd see it beforehand, and we wouldn't run off. It's a conversation. I know too much about data to say it's not a conversation, but it's a conversation. I think that, I know they'd be very interested in having all of you participate. It's called the PDP. I can't even tell you what that stands for. It's the NSC PDP. I probably should be able to tell you, but it's an opportunity to reduce administrative burden. University System of Georgia and the City University of New York have all their institutions in it already. And we're in a process of developing an algorithm that just extracts the data from that data source and creates the reports for you. And you get KPIs and a bunch of other data. I recognize the burden, that's why I said only one data point. We had retention rates and some other rates and credits earned ratios and things like that when I got there in November. I was like, right? Let's just stay focused. I mean, this disaggregated to 10 data tables, I get it, I know, right? It's not ideal. But it could have been a lot more. But there is an opportunity, if you want to have that conversation about being part of that data process, and it just, for all funded projects, it just goes through there.
But it really was such a good recommendation that was made because we are looking at data. We have actually in our grant application, we made reference to the partnerships that we have, even some of the work that we're going to do with ATD, some of the additional work through our Student Success Center and all of the other organizations with whom we work. But at the end of the day, if we do this right, the word initiative fatigue should really go away. It really should be all the pieces of the pie working together for a total picture of the student. Right now, we're not there, and we were, I know this is bad English, but we were less there a couple of years ago. This is really about us all moving in the same direction for the good of our students and the strength of our institutions. And I know that I'm very positive about all this because I'm just off the wall excited. But I'm telling you, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. SUNY is being singled out, and I don't think anyone could say it better than you did by saying that we are special. And we have to have the courage to continue to go because folks are looking at us, but they're also looking at supporting us. So as we go along in the days that pass and the weeks that pass and the months that pass as we continue to do the work, we really need you to tell us what you need. You gave us some excellent recommendations just in the last few moments. What you need, because we will be going back to the funders and asking for additional things. But we don't want to ask for things you don't need. What do you really need to get our students to the finish line? And I think we're probably out of time.
We are very close. We have 3 minutes left. Any final questions or concerns? And then I think Melinda Karp is going to be 3:30. She's starting. Randy's going to introduce her. Where?
In the theater.
In the theater. So is that
diagonal, go out and just diagonal to the right.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Short tour.
Okay, short. So any other questions or concerns? You'll definitely be hearing from us about it. So think about the survey technical assistance. Think about the deliverables. Can you live with those? Are there challenges or questions with those? Please give us feedback prior to us giving you an agreement. So I think that's a new thing. So we're happy to do that. And thank you for your time today. Johanna, did you want to close us out?
No, that's it. Just thank you so very much. Again, there's a much larger group that'll be with us for the Institute over the next several days, but you guys were really our champions in coming together today and being here for the launch because this is a conversation we needed to have because there's a lot of work ahead, but I think opportunities are amazing. So I thank you and I thank our colleagues from the system that are here today for the next steps. Any other final words? Jen, Chris, Randy, John, Chris, Kate?
All good.
Okay, all good, all good?
All good?
If it's all good?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.